Hey everyone, Charles Benoit here, and today I'm kicking off a video series called The Truth About Tariffs. So what is the truth? The truth is that tariffs are an excellent way for countries to raise the money they need to maintain our society. But it's also true that tariffs are poorly understood. And trying to make sense of how we use tariffs in America is daunting to a lot of people. Trade policy is confusing, uh, unfortunately, unnecessarily. It's there's the lingo is out of control. Acronyms are endless, and I'm trying to demystify all of that in this video series. Despite the mess we've made of things these days, tariffs are fairly straightforward to understand. There's a very finite amount of knowledge needed to become a tariff expert, and that's what I want to share with you here. Watch this series, and I guarantee you'll be a tariff expert ready to go head to head with anyone on trade policy and speak with more confidence about trade than pretty much anybody in media and most people on Capitol Hill as well. Um, Speaking personally, I understand things much better if I have the historical context and I don't just try and take something in a vacuum, because then it leaves me with more questions than answers. So in this first video, we're going to illustrate basic tariff concepts by looking at examples of tariffs from the Bronze Age through Antiquity. You're going to learn some key terminology that we still use today that would have been understood by people even all the way back then. And then if you stick through this first episode, I promise, a rant at the end. Okay, so here we've got a map that shows trade routes between Assyria and Anatolia 4,000 years ago. Um, but we actually have evidence that some of these trade routes were as old as 5,000, go back to 3,000 BC, so 5,000 years ago. And with this, we can start with the most basic question, or the most basic terminology. What is a tariff? A tariff is a tax imposed by a government on the import or export of merchandise. Um, Sounds straightforward, but as we can see even here on the right, we've got some nuance here. We wouldn't call a highway toll a tariff, right? And highway tolls are equally as ancient. Tolls are taxes that are used to fund a particular piece of infrastructure. Um, so here we can see in ancient Mesopotamia they had tolls, but we can also see that these city states had their own tariff rates. We can see that the city of Canis, you had to pay a tariff of 3% of the tin or 5% of the textiles you imported. And the city of Assur charged a 4% tariff on any precious metals being imported. And again, so with those tariffs, what they were paying for was they were paying that tax to the city state for the privilege of introducing those goods into local commerce and finding vendors and working as local vendors that have an agent there, selling it to whoever in the city state wanted to buy it. Tariffs were integral to the dawn of civilization. Civilization began when people stopped being hunter gatherers, settled down in one spot, formed towns and cities. And what did they do? What did these city states do? First thing, obviously, was they had official ports of entry where legitimate trade had to pass. That's because they needed revenue to do the things they wanted to do, the things any civilization wants to do. We have tons of detail. We know all of this for a fact. Thanks to archaeologists, they've found and translated 23,000 clay tablets from around this period of 2000 BC. It's about a 150-year window where they got these 23,000 clay tablets. The British Museum has a great article. If you want, you can Google it. The title is "Trade and Contraband in Ancient Assyria," and there's some great stories in there. Um, Everything was written down on these tablets, and they've got this story of this one merchant family, the schemes they had for avoiding tariffs, both by under-declaring the value or smuggling through the Anatolian mountains up here. And if you really want to nerd out on ancient Assyrian tariffs and trade regulation, check out the journal article I credited at the bottom there. That's where this table comes from, and the information and data we have is truly incredible. It's amazing how much we know about what happened so long ago. Fast forwarding here to the first Persian Empire, founded by Cyrus the Great in 550 BC. So, same region, thousands of years go on. Tariffs are still, they're the main source of revenue for the first Persian Empire. They even get a shout out in the Bible in Ezra 4:13. There's a letter from a governor in the empire. He's worrying about tariff collection. So that's pretty cool, specifically. Ancient Greece. So here we've got the Colossus of Rhodes, finished in 280 BC. And I'm including this to emphasize tariffs' beauty of the low compliance costs. And this is so important. And we never talk about it these days. But with tariffs, the sovereign isn't interfering with domestic producers or citizens' day-to-day lives at all. All the tax collection is conveniently located in a specific geographic spots that are the designated ports. With that, you get more consistency, more faith among everyone that taxes are indeed being paid fairly. If someone saw a ship pull up to a secluded beach and that ship started unloading camels carrying goods, it would have been readily apparent to even an ancient plebe that this was a smuggling operation. They would have recognized what was going down, that's important because that person, if the onlooker who saw the smuggling operation, they're not thinking to themselves like, everyone's cheating in taxes. I guess I should, cheat on my taxes too. They're probably thinking, damn, those people are risking it all. They're crazy. If you study income tax, you take tax 101 in law school these days. That's the first thing in the syllabus is like, just from a theoretical point of view, how important it is when making tax policy that everybody perceives that the rules are being applied fairly. Because the moment if people start thinking, oh, everyone else is cheating, they're going to cheat too. And actually, in modern Greece, this is pretty famously a problem. I do recall my tax professor calling out Greece. Sticking with Greece here, not to screenshot you a wall of text, but I actually, I love this journal article, and because the journal article goes again in etymology and being very precise. The ancient Greeks had all these different words for different types of taxes, and it becomes clear the importance of tariffs in their society. And we're going to introduce our first key lingo term here, and that's ad valorem tariff. So, ad valorem tariff, that's, it's Latin for a tax based on the value of shipment. It's not a hard concept. All of us who pay sales tax are used to it. Got a 6% sales tax, real pain when you're trying to buy a car. But, in fact, it's as simple as it seems. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. Because after all, who's to say what the value of something is? We're going to elaborate this in later videos. I'll give you a quick spoiler right now, though. Because these days, we say, well, what's the value? When we say we have a 20% tariff, 20% of what? What are we looking at? And these days, I'm afraid to say that we're actually just relying on the importer themselves to declare the value based on what they paid for it from some foreign vendor in a foreign country. Hugely problematic, right? The foreign vendor, if they've got no presence here, if they've got no presence outside their country, they might be happy to under invoice. Here's just separate invoice to lower your tariffs. I mean, what do they care? They're beyond our jurisdiction. That happens all the time. We got currency issues these days. Invoices are likely in a foreign currency. It's all a giant mess. And again, a little foreshadowing, but we actually had solved this in America in our 19th century tariff schedules, but then undid all of our good work. But anyway, less of an issue in the ancient world. They didn't really have fiat currency. Certainly, from reading about those ancient Assyrian taxes, I mean, they that wasn't undervaluation wasn't a problem except for people hiding goods in their clothes to under declare the quantity of shipment. So that's something they did, but yeah, less problematic back then. So ad valorem tariffs, okay, based on the value. Now specific tariffs, that's the other kind. Ad valorem, specific tariffs. Tariffs are generally in those two categories. So a specific tariff, that's just a specific currency amount, whether it was shekels in the ancient world or dollars, in America today, tied to a specific weight or volume. That one's pretty straightforward. I like specific tariffs. I'm a big fan. Um, and then the other key lingo is, well, how did people know? How did you know what tariff or tax you owed? And the answer is tariff schedules. That's the other key lingo term here. What you're looking at in this picture is the tariff of Palmyra from AD 137, and these giant tablets are on display at the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. And what a tariff schedule is, it's a long list of every single product, or if it's not every single product, they'll have a anything not listed here category, and then next to the product it lists a specific tax you owe. So here on the tariff of Palmyra, we've got you owe 10 denarii per camel load of olive oil, comprising 4 goatskin bags. So you can see specific tariffs, a little less ambiguity than ad valorem tariffs. Good stuff. Now, we've been talking about, in the ancient world, it's very much revenue. Tariffs were revenue. Tariffs were what paid for civilization. I have not personally come across a lot of of the tariff analysis that or evidence or discussion that they use tariffs explicitly for protection, right? To develop domestic to production, ensure that they weren't being crushed by imports. But that being said, just in my cursory searching, I found some pretty interesting information about the way ancient Romans used tariffs. So this is from 218 BC here. We have a law was passed called the Lex Claudia, and that actually prohibited Roman senators and their sons from owning ocean-going ships. So that had a specific, an ocean-going ship was one that had a capacity of more than 300 amphorae, which is a unit of measure. In this Livy transcript, we've got, it explains the reason why that prohibition was there. It was because it was considered dishonorable and just bad policy for Roman senators and their sons, their family, from profiting from imports. So that's pretty interesting. They were very much, they want Roman senators, they wanted them having their domestic estates, domestic production, and they could have smaller boats to get their production to market. But international trade, a little skepticism there in ancient Rome. And then, according to the Tax Foundation, Roman tariffs at their borders with the Near East were 5 to 25 times the rate that you would see in internal taxes, and they're comparing that to tolls within the Roman Empire. So that's interesting. If you're an expert in ancient Rome, I'd love for you to hear your thoughts. How, to what extent were the Romans explicitly using tariffs for production? Okay. Well, we're coming up at 15 minutes here. We've introduced some basic concepts. We're going to stop this one here. We've covered ad valorem versus specific tariffs. We've covered what a tariff schedule is, how integral they were in the formation of early civilization, and how they made sense and were popular for so many thousands of years due to their low compliance costs. Now, I also promised you a rant. So here's, just so you know where I'm coming from on tariffs. Here in America, the bottom 50% of income taxpayers, not a fan of income tax, most Americans aren't, The bottom 50% of American income taxpayers, that's people with an adjusted gross income of below 44,300 per year. They paid 48 billion in federal income taxes in 2019. Okay, 48 billion. Remember that number. And I'm not cherry picking here, but that's with the Tax Foundation in 2022. That's the most recent data where we have the breakdown. So the 48 billion number really jumped out at me because that's the same amount as we collected in our China tariffs just last year in 2021. I'm referring to the called the 301 tariffs that under the Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974. Those are the ones that President Trump imposed in 2018. It looks like we're going to hit 48 billion again this year in our additional China tariffs. So not only is that more than the bottom half of income taxpayers, that's actually more than all the gas tax, both federal and state, collected at the pump from Americans and remitted to the Highway Trust Fund. So how can anyone say the tariffs are more aggressive than taking dollars directly out of the paychecks of the bottom half of working Americans, or taxing fuel at the pump, which disproportionately affects low-income workers, of course. And yet, we live in a world where you got U.S. Chamber and all these business groups saying, gotta cut tariffs, they're so regressive, cut tariffs to fight inflation. President Biden's been, thinking about it. Thankfully, he hasn't done it yet. But I mean, hello, can we just pause that? How about we cut the bottom income tax to the bottom half of filers? How about that? How about we eliminate gas tax, to fight inflation? To me, it's just insane. In the 21st century, we've totally normalized taxing the wages of individuals who own nothing and are just scraping by. Not to mention, fuel. But tariffs are considered somehow inherently regressive. Especially our tariffs in China, more often than not paid by China. We're going to get into all of that and a lot more. But for now, I hope you enjoyed that first intro. In the subsequent videos, we're going to get into more modern times. We're going to go through the whole American experience from colonial times to the present era, and illustrating how tariffs have worked, how they are working, and hopefully arm you to better debate tariffs. Okay, thanks a lot.